Good afternoon. I want to speak personally and then maybe conclude with some more professional remarks. I have devoted the past 40 years in the pursuit of an Arab-Israeli peace settlement. There has not been one day during those 40 years that I have not given thought or taken actions in pursuit of peace. My wife has told me to get a life. Nonetheless, this is the life that I've chosen, to see what I could do as an individual, as a government employee, and now as a person at this university to try to advance the course of peace. In the course of these 40 years, I've developed something of a credo that motivates me and guides my actions and my thoughts. One of them is that I am a fervent supporter of a two-state solution in which a secure and safe state of Israel can live in peace and security next to a secure and safe state of Palestine. I believe the occupation should come to an end, should have come to an end, and should come to an end. I believe in Palestinian rights. I believe in Israeli rights. I oppose violence and terrorism. I oppose incitement. I oppose settlement activity. I oppose occupation practices that make Palestinian life so challenging. I support U.S. government actions, not just words, to bring to life our policy, and have been a constant critic both in the time that I served in government as well as in the time that I've been here at Princeton, of American indecisiveness or indetermination with regard to the pursuit of peace. And I came to this university in part because it offered an opportunity, as you just heard so eloquently from Professor George, to engage in reasoned debate and discussion in a marketplace of ideas, a place where we could differ and we could argue and we could invite speakers to join us and enlighten us about their views, whether we agreed with them or not. I came to the university to engage in workshops and seminars in which the questions relating to Israeli-Palestinian peace and Israeli-Arab peace could be discussed in a manner that sometimes was not available to us in government, where we had policy prescriptions that we were asked to follow and advance. And I came to university because it allowed for interaction with students who could then go out and actually do something in the world, could engage through internships or trips or their studies, junior papers, senior theses, the professions into which they entered, to try to advance the goals to which I had dedicated my own professional life. And in that respect, I have been a fervent supporter of student activism. Sometimes this has been something of a sleepy campus. Some people like it that way. But I like the idea of debate, when we differ on things and when we can talk about things and when we can argue. But what I fervently oppose is having a university become a tool for punitive measures, whether it's punitive measures directed at Israel or punitive measures directed at Palestinians or at other Arabs or at China. There is a role for punitive measures. It's a role that governments are supposed to exercise in the pursuit of diplomatic objectives. We sometimes call it coercive diplomacy. And there are plenty of examples of coercive diplomacy that work. But to have a university subvert its mission and become such a tool, and to take sides in a debate when in fact there are always at least two sides in a political conflict, really turns the purpose of a university on its head. Now, nothing in my, whatever you call it, personal credo would suggest that I want to excuse bad behaviors. But there are bad behaviors on both sides. And to pick and choose, in this particular case, that what Israel does is worthy of punishment, but what Palestinians do, or Saudis do, or Egyptians do, or anyone else in this region, let alone outside this region, is not worthy of punishment, would again be a subversion of what we do here in this university, where we're supposed to be above that kind of partisanship that doesn't examine issues completely. Now, nothing I say suggests that individually we should give up our partisan politics. That's part and parcel of our political system. And student advocacy is, in my view, a wonderful thing. But let's do it the right way. Let's work together, students with students, students with faculty, and faculty and students with the administration, to figure out what we can do positively to impact a solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. There are ideas out there now for student internships, working on people-to-people activities between Israelis and Palestinians. Universities should devote resources to increase the number of activities that we do in which we can bring Israelis and Palestinians, whether it's track 2 diplomacy, in other words, informal diplomacy, or other kinds of interactions between people that can break down barriers and create pathways of communication. There's a lot that a university can do to advance the cause of peace in the Middle East. But I really would urge the student body to think twice about turning a university's investment policy into a punitive tool, in this case against what is called occupation practices, but tomorrow it could be China or Saudi Arabia or any one of a number of countries in the United Nations whose behaviors are horrific and in fact are far worse than even the challenging situation in the occupied territories. Now, there are many arguments that have been marshaled in favor of divestment. And last week there was a similar gathering in which some professors and some others from outside the community made arguments that suggested this was the right thing to do, and that, in their words, you had to start somewhere. I disagree. It's not the right thing to do. And this is not the right conflict in which to start. There is no comparison between what Israel is doing in the occupied territories and the horrors of apartheid. We may face that problem in the future, but until today, it is not an apartheid policy. And in fact, inside the state of Israel, it's a vibrant and thriving democracy, of which there are not that many in the international system. And it's a democracy which, even if we don't like the results of this election or the previous election, is a democracy in which people are able to advance their views and argue them and fight for them and change government policy as a result of their electoral choices. There are things to do to help advance the course of peace. And there are things that don't advance the course of peace. And so I have joined this panel to urge students, to the extent that they will listen at all to a faculty member, to say no to divestment. But not just to say no and then go home, but to say no to divestment and yes to continued activism on behalf of peace. Volunteer, do internships, press us to do more, press the university to do more to build bridges of peace. I think that's the way we as a university community can not only foster debate, but can actually make a contribution to the cause of peace. Thank you.